Brothers and sisters in Christ, what a precious time this is as we gather together for the first time as a Presbytery family. It's so good to see people I've only ever yet seen in a small square box. So welcome warmly to you all. Gathered in stormy times as we are, I say be welcome. And I invite you to listen to this adapted story from St Mark's Gospel, which is offered as a parable for our time and a gentle lead-in to the evening's presentation, which we're looking forward to from Brian shortly. People from parishes far and wide were called to an event on one side of the Forth Estuary. They were there all day, listening to a marvellous new preacher. His reputation was controversial. It was said he suggested doing things differently, to make the lives of people easier, less yoked to things which tied them down and held them back, which would loose them to do great things in his name. And there was hopefulness in some. Others looked at the whole thing a little sideways, and in the quietness of their hearts thought, we've seen all this before. But they came. They even brought snacks and sat together. I think a lot of families came, hoping for news of better times. And so the time came, and the people from the kingdom's parishes raised their hands and voted for a new thing. And they called it Fife Presbytery. But here's the thing. Transitions are the hardest times. Psychologists tell us that. There is a time for everything, and there's a season for every activity under the heavens, including a time for the old things to die and new things to be born. But even in good times, transitions are energy-sapping, worrisome. They stretch people and resources, which already feel spent. The pieces on the ecclesiastical chessboard reposition, adding to anxiety, and new people come onto the scene and bring their ideas with them. And who are these folk? And who asked them to do this and be that? And why is it some of us feel like, here we go again? And by the way, it seems we have 3 times the amount of work to do with 1/3 of the resources. When we voted to move to another place, we expected to feel Jesus with us to calm our fears. At the very least, we expected him to be conscious. In all this fast-moving heat and light, where is he to calm and steer in this storm? The coracle, carrying the people of the parishes, left shore and headed into the expanse of open estuary sea. They knew Jesus was with them, they knew it, and they believed it, and they were able to consider even doing the crossing in the first place because of his presence and because of his promises. And new life was heaving into view. And most knew that this would mean familiar things would be in jeopardy. And many felt the sea swelling beneath them as the bark moved closer to the other side. Remembering, Mark tells us the other side is Gentile territory. The journey is a big ask. Of course, Mark is our forerunner to disturbing new times. He doesn't sugarcoat what new life means with Jesus. He shows Jesus from the start moving very fast. Stories hurtle by. Events shift. There are confrontations, there are highlights, there are lowlights, there are encounters with extremely difficult people, and new possibilities which shock some and delight others. And these are thrown at us like windstorm chucks spume. He quotes Jesus warning us that there will be fake messiahs and lying preachers. But towards the end of the gospel, when he rises from the dead, Jesus' presence isn't confined to a single space like the stern of our boat. He's everywhere. And Mark tells us from the moment he rises, he's here and he's over there. He's with Mary Magdalene in the East Nook. But the disciples don't always believe her. Later he's seen out walking with two of them in the Landwood countryside over by Leslie, but not everyone believes them. And later as the 11 eat supper, he pops round to a wee house down by Culross, where people said he was annoyed because not everyone had put their fears aside enough to believe such a new thing was possible. In turbulent times, Mark shows us that Jesus is in all our places, unbelievable places, places which frankly don't bear belief. He says they will take snakes in their hands. They will drink poison and not be hurt. We will lay hands on the sick and make them well because he is with us. He's not sleeping at all. Amen. And let's give thanks that journeying with Jesus means he raises storms and by his presence transforms our fears into kingdom work, to be fit for purpose in his new life. Amen. And thanks be to God for the gift and the promise of the gospel. Very grateful to Gordon, who is going to play for us the hymn, Christ Be Beside Me. Thank you.
And welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. I have some bad news for you. If you expect this to be like a normal Presbytery meeting where you can sit there quiet and untroubled and think about what you're going to have for tea on Sunday, then that's not going to happen tonight. You are all going to get the chance, unless I fail in what I'm trying to do, to speak and to talk to each other. And isn't it wonderful for us, for the first time, to meet as Fife Presbytery? And I know people are still nervous about meeting together, and we respect that. And that's why we're recording the proceedings tonight. And we'll put it up online so that people that haven't been able to come and join us or haven't felt comfortable about joining us will actually be able to input their ideas as well. Critical thing about a night like this is that you all have the chance to have an input into the future direction of our presbytery. And we've not had the chance to do that. I have some intimations, first of all. The property registers, Gillian, for some churches are lying at the back. If you know you haven't got yours, then please pick them up on the way out. I have to keep asking you to keep your masks on, and I have to ask you, even in the times when you'll be talking to each other, to try and stay at least a metre apart. Other than that, I hope we're going to have fun together. Final initial comment from me is to say that the slides that I use tonight work at congregational level too, if you're looking at the future direction of your congregation. And if anybody wants a set of the slides, it's more difficult to give you the videos that I'm going to use, but if you want the slides, then I'm happy to do that. Just need to drop me an email or speak to me later. We know that we've got some technical difficulties in bringing up the videos, so you might have to wait on some of the videos coming up, but let's see where we go. The objectives for tonight are to remind ourselves, I did an introduction to this in the presbytery meeting, the last presbytery meeting, of what it means to plan strategically in a presbytery setting. And then I want us to try and understand what success would look like. We're a new presbytery. There's a lot of excitement in 121 about what the new presbyteries, Argyll and Clyde, rather, and in other places, and there will be more joining us. There's a lot of excitement about what we might achieve. We need to be up to that challenge. So we'll look at what success might look like. We also need to look at, honestly, where we are as a presbytery and as congregations now. And these are the two key questions that we're going to address tonight. And then we're going to think about, if we're going to get to that successful vision in the future, what are the key things we have to do to achieve to get to that? So there are three questions. What will an exciting, successful future be like for Fife Presbytery? 2, where are we now, honestly? And 3, what are the big goals that we might achieve? That's what we're going to try and do together tonight. But I want to give you a safety briefing, first of all. I have to say, I did this once with a group from England basketball, and a woman at the back put her hand up and she said, "Brian, I don't like to worry you, but I used to train stewards and stewardesses for British Airways, so you better get it right." This is slightly tongue-in-cheek. We are looking at the future, and one of the greatest challenges about looking at the future is that we carry a lot of baggage with us. So in an evening like this, you have the chance to park your baggage and leave it at check-in. You need to unfasten your seatbelt. Now, that was the lady from British Airways had a problem with that. But if we're going to move forward in the Church of Scotland or in the church generally, we've got to be prepared to live a bit more dangerously than we have done in the past. Feel free to move around. Well, you're not allowed to do that tonight, but what I mean by that is, don't feel you have to hang on to the argument you've made for the last 20 years. Change your views as you listen to other people speak and see how that works. Headphones must not be worn. We've got 2 ears and one mouth. The exercises we'll do together tonight are about talking and about listening. So listen to what your friends and colleagues round about you are saying. Mobiles off. I used to run a penalty system for the first mobile when I was doing workshops like this in my business. A penalty system which was incremental. £5 for the first phone that went off, £10, £15, and so on. And I did 2 workshops for the Scottish Rugby Union one day with all the clubs in Scotland. And we were going to raise money for a disabled charity for rugby. Not one phone went off. What a mean bunch. It's a one-class service. This is Ryanair and EasyJet. There are no posh seats at the front, ministers. This is a one-class service. Your views are all equally welcome. This is important. There are 2 words tonight that are banned when used together. Yes, but. Yes, but stops a discussion and stops moving things forward. You can use yes and, but you're allowed to put up a yellow card and a red card if you hear somebody using the words yes, but. How often have we been stopped from thinking about something or trying something because somebody said, yes, but we tried that 25 years ago and it didn't work then. So no yes buts. only yes ands. You'll find that people get tied up in knots with that and say yes and but, no and yes, but don't worry about it. No in-flight rage, and we've not quite taken off yet, so you've still got the chance to get off the plane. Some of these are important for an evening like this. I want you to do an exercise to start with. There are sheets of paper on the tables. If you can get a hold of one and take a pencil or a pen, make sure that you all, if you can get one, just pass them around, and there should be enough, hopefully, for everyone. Lauren will give out some more. Now, everyone got a piece of paper, a pencil? Here's what I want you to do. It's not a difficult exercise. I want you to draw 9 dots on your piece of paper. Some of you have done this exercise before. If you have, don't share it with the people that don't know how to do it. Draw the 9 dots on the sheet of paper. The task you have is to join up the 9 dots with no more than 4 straight lines without lifting the pen or pencil off the paper. 4 straight lines only. Join up the 9 dots without lifting the pen or pencil off the paper. And I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes to try and do that. It's not a difficult exercise, but once you see how it's done. Okay, let me show you. You've just cracked it, Neil, have you? Here's how it goes. And you'll understand why I've used this exercise, hopefully, in a minute. First line, down through the middle. Okay, got that bit right. Yes, that's the easy one, Lorraine. Second line goes outside the box of the dots. And unless you did that, you can't solve this problem. Third one goes up and outside the box and down through is back in and creates it. So that's simple exercise, of course. It's about thinking outside the box. And we're all trapped in the boxes in which we exist, whether they're church boxes, whether they're business boxes, whether they're sporting boxes. We're trapped, and we don't often think outside the walls of the boxes within which we exist. If you're going to craft an exciting future for any organization, then that has to be done in the context of thinking outside these boxes. Otherwise, we'll just continue. It's Henry Ford that said, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. Are we surprised that the Church of Scotland is in a very steep decline? If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. That's our challenge. I'm going to revise just 1 or 2 of the slides that I used. We are already planning. We have to produce the Presbytery mission plan by the end of next year. So why do we need a strategy? All planning has to sit within a strategic envelope. And unless organizations really understand where they're going, it's really difficult to do the nuts and bolts of all kinds of planning. So we need to ask ourselves, what is that strategy? What are we trying to do? We've not had much of a chance in Fife Presbytery to meet, to talk about these kind of things. And that's why tonight, for me anyway, is so important. Why do we need a strategy? We need to provide the context within which we take forward all the plans that we might produce. Here's a typical church organization. It took me a long time to get that video, but for me, it's not just a church organization. Many organizations were like that. behind that big boulder, pushing it as hard as we can up the hill. And the boulder has two consequences. The first is you can't move away from it or it rolls back down the hill. But the second is that you can't see very well when you're trapped behind a boulder. So a strategic exercise like the one we're going to do tonight is about kind of putting the chalk under. The boulder doesn't go away. We still have the day-to-day to deal with. But if you put a chalk under the boulder and you take a few steps ahead of it, suddenly the view becomes better. And that's why I very much value that video. Now, here is a typical presbytery. With any luck.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
EDS.
That doesn't describe Fife Presbytery, but there is a cat herding role and responsibility and a challenge that we have as we try, as a court of the church, to move things forward. So a good strategy is really quite simple. To the management consultant dictum that make it as complicated as possible because that makes the fee as big as possible. I never worked on that basis when I worked as a management consultant. I always worked on the basis of if it's going to work, it's got to be simple. And a simple strategy is described by that slide. You start from where you want to get to. You start from the fish and you work back. I think it's D. I can see your eyes going round, so you're probably following. And to a certain extent, in a church organization, in many ways, compared with some of the business and sporting and cultural organizations with which I've worked, large and small, it's relatively easy for us. Because we know what our mission is. We are clear, or we should be clear, what our mission is. And that's Matthew 28, 19 to 20. Making disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. We know what our mission is. We know already in Fife Presbytery that we want this presbytery in its mission to be supporting congregations and supporting ministers. That's the given bit. That's clear. And that's a word model that we used in the build-up to the Fife Presbytery, and you can see supportive, missional, support, innovative, listening, and the words that came to the front of that word exercise. And yes, and, not yes, but. It's easy for us. Jeremiah 29, verses 11 and 12. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So folks, it's easy. All we have to do tonight is discern the plans that God has for us, and we will be successful. I had the great joy of sitting beside Lucy Moore, who set up the Messy Church organization. She's one of these people, if you sit beside her for any length of time, you are exhausted. She's so full of energy and enthusiasm. And I said to her, why has Messy Church been so successful throughout the country and now further into the world? She said, for one reason, she said, God was in it. God is in it. And that's why it's been successful. So the job we have is to find out what his plans are for us here in Fife. A simple analogy, three things that we need to do. We need to have a clear vision of where we want to get to. If we don't have that, we will never get there. And we'll go in all sorts of different directions trying to get somewhere. I'm going to be controversial and say I think that's one of the challenges that the church faces nationally at the moment. I'm not sure, as an ordained local minister, what the vision of success is for the Church of Scotland nationally. The second thing we've got to do is identify some key goals, the big things that we need to deliver if we're going to get to that successful future. And then we need to do the action planning. The good news is you're not going to do much of the action planning tonight. Let me start with vision. And we are going to start shortly an exercise to talk about vision. For me, this is the most important part of any strategic exercise. Vision has two simple qualities. It inspires you to act, and it inspires others to act along with you. It's the best definition I've found in 15 years of being a strategic consultant. It inspires you to act. In other words, it encourages people to get on your bus because the headboard says where they want to go. And if you haven't got a clear vision, an exciting and an inspiring vision, then chances are that there's going to be no progress. And if you want a scriptural reference for that, have a look at Nehemiah. Nehemiah built a wall, but actually what he was trying to do was to rebuild the people. And so the strategic consultant's book in the Bible, apart from Jeremiah, is very much Nehemiah as a case study. So, enough of me talking. I want you to think 5 years ahead, 2026-ish. And I want you to think that St Andrews, Freudian slip, Kirkcaldy, Dunfermline, Fife Presbytery has been really successful. What will that success look like? I want you to be realistic, but I want you to be aspirational and inspirational in your discussions around the table. And I want you to round your tables, actually discuss this topic. It's 5 years from now. What will success look like? Sorry, I'm struggling to get the slides up quickly. Excellent. Well, that's the question. I'm going to bring flip chart paper round, but you're all sitting various ways round tables. Keeping your distance, can I invite you just to sit right, turn your seats so you're round the table? And you need to appoint somebody as the scribe. The key condition about the scribe is that the scribe should have decent writing, because I've got to read it later. So elect somebody as your scribe. And then I want you to come up with no more than 5 bullet points. 5 bullet points that describe the success that we will have achieved together in 5 years' time if we set our minds to it. What will success look like in 5 years' time? And I want you ultimately to agree 5 bullet points. I'm going to give you about 20 minutes for this discussion because it really is important. Over to you. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to ask Lauren now to come around with a microphone. Can you appoint someone, you can relieve the scribe if you like, but appoint someone who has not been the scribe to be your spokesperson on behalf of your group. And please just take us through your 5 points as briefly as you can. Thank you. David Sibley.
I can't let you hold it just for COVID, so I'm going to just loom over here. Right. We didn't actually manage to stick to one word for each 5 points, but we've kind of clustered things together. So we're joyful, inclusive ministry. We want to be shared, forward-looking, and realistic vision. We want to be valued and appreciated by the church and the community. Looking to have energy and enthusiasm with unity and sustainability, something that we can go forward with. And freedom to focus on missional values.
Thank you. Just keep moving back, Lauren, if you can. Thank you.
Okay, the top one here we had is get us working together. So get all the people working together. Presbytery to resource that. Working together and sharing. The second one was resourcing tasks. Resourcing tasks centrally so people are released. So releasing people. And that's where Christine started singing. So in the next line I wrote signs of growth. Signs of growth. was the last one. Signs of growth in the parishes in activity, hopeful signs, I think is a key thing to see within 5 years.
Something off that, presumably. Make sure that we share that news, share our good news. Thank you. Scott, thank you.
We only get 3, unfortunately. And it simply says, Presbytery should be enabling and supporting congregations to connect with their communities. I've just underlined the words enabling and supporting. They're very positive looking words. Next, leave a lot of baggage behind. Move beyond dealing with buildings. I'll say that again. Move beyond dealing with buildings. We should no longer have poorly equipped spaces in the wrong places. And then thirdly, well-established training, and I was hearing an echo in the previous group there about enabling their well-established training for roles in churches, people doing what they do, and the training should be run by Presbytery.
Thanks, Scott.
We looked at being connected, a range of expressions, mixed economy, sustainable, relevance and identity is usually important, and to be all inclusive.
Yeah, thank you. Very sharp. Bill?
Okay, we had a big discussion about the church being an agent of social change and seeking justice, engaging with the community. Then we talked about being less minister dependent and have more people involved in all the ministries of the church, which would mean training needed to be more practical and be for the whole people of God. We talked about a church with discipleship at its heart, a church that is ecumenical and intergenerational, and a church that looks at fellowship as an important aspect of its life together.
And last but not least, the front group. John, you've been fingered by your colleagues.
Our first point was to move away from the traditional 11 o'clock Sunday morning service to have a more shop front, high street, perhaps pop-up churches, perhaps relating to social issues at the time. Our second point was we would have new models of ministry. They would be more mobile. We saw a role for a technical ministry to use the skills that we've developed during the pandemic to engage with social media and videos, etc. And we also saw a model that was less insular and more ecumenical. We wanted to have seen the role of chaplaincy being broadened into places where people gather, not necessarily in a place of worship, but at their work, where they shop, where they entertain. We wanted to see the gospel message more relevant to younger people, using music and perhaps, again, technology. And our fifth point was finding a different language to use to engage with people's spirituality.
Thank you, John. Thank you all. We're not going to try and draw that together. That's a challenge for me as I write it up later. I have to say, personally, being the chair of Workplace Chaplaincy Scotland, I was delighted to hear the line of discussion you were having. But it's interesting. Workplace Chaplaincy Scotland have a listening post in the shopping centre in Dundee. And the number of people that come in there is huge on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis. And as a workplace chaplain last week, I had the great joy, something I've never done before, of blessing a fire engine. But hey-ho, the fire engine was bound for Paraguay as part of a charitable exercise, but it was nice. So thank you for that. That's the first part of the exercise. That's us looking at what success might be like. And I'm drawing out things like sustainable, but I'm drawing out things from what you're saying about different new forms of worship, new worshipping places, getting to people where they are, rather than expecting them to come to us at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And that's the challenge, isn't it, at the heart of what if we're going to have a future as a denomination. That's the challenge that's at the heart of what we're about. And you've identified that. And it's right that we should have a vision that tackles some of these major challenges, but does it in a realistic way. So that's where we want to get to. Now the question is, where are we? Warts and all. And we're going to do this exercise in pairs. Can I encourage you to be socially distant with your partner? Can I encourage you also to try to have a partner that's not from your church and somebody new? If you can pair up roughly without moving too much, but try to have somebody new to speak to. This is called listening pairs because it's about talking and listening. Here's some helpful advice, which I did again show to Presbytery, and it's my dear friend Robert Burns. Would some poor the gift he gave us to see ourselves as others see us? It would frae many a blunder free us, and the English is on the screen, and foolish notion. What airs and dress and gait would lead us, and e'en, yes, devotion. And I love that. If you know the Burns story, Burns was sitting in church watching a beautiful young lady in front of him with a louse climbing up the back of her hat, her Lunardi bonnet. And I just find that a marvellous, I just love Burns, but as Catherine does. But that's about it. We're not always as honest as we need to be where we are. But if we're going to try and travel on a journey, a strategic journey together to do exciting things, we need to know where we're starting from. This exercise, I'm sorry about the number of words on the screen, but it's important to get you all involved. Follow these instructions carefully. This exercise has gone wrong for me in my consultancy career more times than any other exercise that I've cared to think about. But what I'd like you to do, the aim is to identify our present strengths and our present weaknesses, and of our presbytery and its congregation. So I'm taking presbytery to mean the collective of us all together. And I want you to work in pairs. And the way this works, and these are strict rules because they're designed to give each and every one of you in the room the chance to have an input. First person speaks on this subject, strengths and weaknesses, for 2 minutes. I'll do the timing, without interruption. Your partner can nod, smile, or grimace, but the partner is not allowed to have a dialogue. Now, not allowed to have a dialogue means your partner doesn't get to speak. I'm sorry to be pedantic about this, but I can promise you this has gone wrong once or twice. So one person speaks, and you can say what you like because you can't be interrupted. You say what you like. After 2 minutes, and strictly after 2 minutes, it swaps over to the other person. And the other person can say, Jane, I thought you talked a load of rubbish. You can say what you like because she can't interrupt you now. I thought you talked a load of rubbish there. Here are my ideas. Or you can say, I like some of these things, Jane, but here are my ideas in addition to that. Second person speaks, 2 minutes. We then go back to the first. Bill? £5 to a charity of your nomination, Bill. Thank you. Then you go back to the first person for the second time. And you can carry on the dialogue. You've heard more. So you can say, yeah, I agree with some of these things, but here are my things. So you do that for 2 minutes, and then finally, second person, second time, same again. After that, I'll give you about 5 minutes to talk to each other about what you've said and what you've heard. And the task is to agree up to 3 good points and 3 bad points. And I will give you, every pair, 6 post-it notes. Again, I'm sorry to be pedantic about this, but I promise you this has caused all sorts of problems in the past. 3 yellow ones for the good points, and 3 pink ones for the bad points. The idea of giving them is so that I can collect them individually. Please don't try to save paper by writing 3 points on 1 post-it note, or I'll have to get the scissors out and chop it up later, because what I'm trying to do is collate the collective view of all of you. So 3 good points and 3 bad points on the post-it notes, and then we'll collect them in, and we'll be able to see the summary of that. So find yourself a partner. If you want to give yourselves a bit more space, move it in the middle of the floor, whatever. Ideally a partner you don't know too well, and there's pews at the back if you want to go up further, and so on. And when you're settled and ready, I'll start the timing. And the task for the next 10 minutes or so is to come up with 3 good points on the yellow post-it notes and 3 areas needing improvement. I used to call them bad points until I was doing a workshop on Arran for the play strategy for North Ayrshire. And this woman put her hand up at the back and she said, on Arran, we don't have any bad points. Just one or two things needing marginal improvement. So good points on the yellow post-it notes, one on each, and you have to agree them. And so 3 reds, 3 pinks, and 3 yellows. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Last chance to fill in some of the post-it notes. In pre-COVID times, what we would have done now was get you all reading out post-it notes and piling them up and so on. And I'm not really able to do that in the way I would normally do it, because the point of this exercise is to get some sense of whether there's a common view amongst, in this case, Presbytery, about the key issues of weakness and the key issues of strength. We will collate them all together, but I want just to dip in and out. I'm going to try and do it without the microphone, the roving microphone, because it's too complicated to do that. And what I'm going to do is just ask one or two of you to read out one of your post-it notes, and then if you've got that or something very similar to it, just put your hand up or hold the post-it note up, and it will give us a visual sense of whether we're seeing things in the same way. An organization, when you pile these up and physically pile them up in front of you, an organization that has a fairly common view of its challenges has a relatively small number of piles, whereas an organization that has a very diverse view of its challenges has a very large number of piles. I'll collate them when I write it up and so on, but just to give us a flavor of what you've been saying, I'm going to start with the good points, because I'm that kind of person, really. So, Alan Kimmett, give me one of your good points. Just shout out so folk can hear you. An openness to change. Hey, hallelujah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for choosing a really good one. Thank you for choosing a really good one. Who else have we got? Marianne, give me another yellow one, or Sarah. A broad skill base. Anything else to do with skills and talents? Yeah? This is looking good so far, David. Thank you. Which reminds, David, give me one of yours then, please. Yes, positive still. Flexibility to know that one size doesn't fit all. Ooh, clever one. Neil, what's your say? New opportunities, new ways of doing things. New opportunities, new worshipping communities, new anything to do with that sort of area. Thank you. Still on yellows, Alan McCafferty, you want to give me a yellow, please? We are a new united Presbytery. State the obvious, because sometimes the obvious is really important to us. We are a new united, albeit a virtually united Presbytery up until tonight. Thank you, that's a really good one. Gillian, have you got a yellow? Really good networks in our communities. You know, one of the exciting things about being Fife Presbytery is we're Fife. How many of you are old enough to remember the Fight for Fife campaign? I was at university in St Andrews at the time, I think, but yeah. So we have communities that we can link in with. That's a really good one. Anybody else got that? Communities and linking in with communities, that kind of area? Yeah, okay. Jane, give me another yellow one if you've got one.
They're all covered, but similar to Gillian, we've got being bigger, we have the ability to raise issues and to reach out and be more relevant.
So the advantage of size, the bigger presbytery. Yeah, Bill. You've got about 25 post-it notes there, Bill. Yeah, give me that one.
One of the things we said was about presbytery meetings and stuff, the fact that it's open and the conversation has engaged more people.
Yeah, so different ways of working, practical ways of working as presbytery. Let's see, have you got one? Sorry, I can't read your post-it note from here. Below Alan Kimmett. Yes, it's you, Christy. Different, great jobs being done by the two boards, yes. Anybody else got the present structure or something to do with? Yes, Lorraine? Focus on mission. Focus on mission. Anybody else got focus on mission? Yeah. You need to work harder, Neil. But with that, I'll let you give us another yellow one. Thank you. The work that's happening with children and young people. Yeah, okay. Let's, any other ones that I've missed out? Any ones that you think are key? From the yellows, Gavin? Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we've done a lot of that, even restricted during the pandemic. Yeah, to be a beacon of hope. Jim Reid, have you got one there? Having a hybrid car, I identify with that, but yes, hopefully. But we have done things that we didn't dream of 18 months ago, haven't we, in terms of new technology and the like. And it's all, I have to give credit to Graham, who's videoing things tonight. Graham has been my salvation in Temple Hall in Torbain in terms of helping us get things online. So Graham, I'm just giving you thanks. In case I forget to thank you at the end for videoing tonight, I want to... But I'm just, it's handy having him there. Any others? Good ones, John?
We had one, the size of the presbytery and also possible reconfiguration of congregations and parishes allows us to employ people.
Yeah.
Things that we've had volunteers doing and also to share expertise across a wider area.
Yeah. That gives me another cue to pay tribute to our staff, particularly to David and Neil and Lorraine and Lauren and Elaine, who's not with us tonight. We are now blessed in having good resources, full-time resources, and it makes a big difference. Catherine, have you got any yellows you wanted to share with us that haven't been shared so far? Yeah, a willingness to share the whole business of ministry. And that has to be the future, doesn't it, in terms of moving forward, as the numbers of full-time ministers decrease and so on. Any final yellow ones before I come on to the less positives?
More joint working with other churches and denominations.
More ecumenical activity. Thank you, Gordon. Yes, that's a good prompt. Okay, let's look at the less positive ones, and Zoltan, give me a red one that you had with Alan there. We're not making disciples. Yeah, that's an important. Anybody else got that? Challenge of discipleship. Derek, thank you. Yeah. Okay, let's have another one. Lorraine, give me one of your pinks. Thank you. Fear of change. Fear of change. It's what I would call the tyranny of the status quo. We think we want to defend the status quo, but in reality, the status quo for all of us is like that. It's the decline. So fear of change. Anybody got that one? Yeah? Fear of change or things related to that. Let's have another one. I can't read the names at the back, sadly. Sarah, give me one of your reds, please. Yeah, let's talk about Presbytery. Congregations don't know who or what Presbytery is about. So challenges of Presbytery itself. Anybody else got issues like that in the pinks? Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And let's put my mask on if I'm moving. Let's see what else. John, give me one of your pinks, please.
What you just mentioned. Lack of direction and clarity and simplicity from Presbytery.
Lack of clarity, simplicity from Presbytery. That's an important pushback. Thank you for that. Anybody else got that? Any others related to the organisation and administration of Presbytery? Yeah, who was that? Okay, what have we got? Who was it that said? Oh, somebody at the back, sorry. I've only got a hearing aid in one ear. Administratively demanding, yes. No, it's a good point. It is a good point. And it is part of that supportive bit that we've been talking about, as to how to relieve that burden where we can, where we're within the envelope of church law, where we have the opportunity to do that. So that's important. Derek, give me one of your pinks.
Similar, but it's really pointing out the opposite that you said you had.
Yeah.
COVID, building budgets, new plans, kind of negative vibes there.
Yep. Yeah, so we haven't had a good starting point. Thank you. John, do you want to give me one of, do you want to give me one of yours?
A lot of people still focus on buildings and not people.
Yeah, buildings, not people. I often ask the question about whether we are Historic and Environment Scotland or are we the Church of Scotland. Lorraine, same thing?
It just says too many buildings.
Buildings-related ones?
Financial and human resources.
Consuming financial and human resources. Who else has got a buildings issue? Yeah, quite a few. Thank you. Let's have another one. Bill, do you want to give me?
Similar, but one of the things we were talking about was that we need to learn to trust each other to do the business.
Yeah.
And that's part of it, we're just getting to know each other. But that whole thing of, letting the people who are doing things get on with it, rather than everything having to go through every meeting.
I often tell the story of a Scottish sporting body for whom I was working. It will remain anonymous for a minute, and then I'll tell you who it was. I was just doing a workshop with their board, and I asked them one simple question. They were talking about having trying to get towards a more successful future. And I had a workshop with the board, which was chaired by Liz McColgan. Oops, that'll mean you understand who they were. And I said to the board, how much time do you spend talking about growth and development? And how much time do you spend talking about control and management? The answer to that was 90-10. They changed the way, I had only a short involvement with them, but they did, and all credit to them. They changed the way they worked. They're now one of the most successful sports in Scotland because they started to prioritise at the top level, at their management level, getting things done, getting new things done, focusing on that. And they still had to control their coaches, they still had to control their athletes, they had to do all these administrative tasks, but they managed them in a slightly different way. So they created time. And that's often the problem. That's the boulder that you saw on the screen. That boulder affects all of us in congregations and in Presbytery. And somehow you've got to deal with the boulder. But unless you deal with the boulder, you'll never succeed in moving forward into a successful future. Sorry, I'm preaching. Alan, give me another red one from you.
Well, we think we need better and more ecumenical working.
Yeah. So sometimes the positives and negatives occur in both. So we're doing more, as Gordon suggested here, but as you say, there's that's. Andrew, have you got our red one there?
A weariness at all levels.
Yes, a weariness at all levels. You can put two hands up if that's you. Yeah, a weariness at all levels. And that's an important challenge to us, isn't it? In terms of, it's back to that link about making things that can be made simpler, so that we don't draw too much energy out of the system to make it work. Okay, any last red ones? We'll not miss any of them because I'll collate them all together and I'll show you how that works in the output from tonight. Gavin?
I have two that haven't come up, so I don't know if you want both.
Yeah, give us them.
One, we felt so often cliquey, cliques, and not always inclusive to everybody. So we talked about unions and mergers, but we still talk about our old congregation that was X, and we're not going to be part of Y, or folk coming in, so if we're trying to be missional, are they welcome? Are they feeling included?
Yep.
And into that probably comes the second issue of language and church actions. So we talk about folk coming into a service, and we all stand as the Bible comes in, but a visitor hasn't a clue, they feel embarrassed, they feel awkward, so they go away. Language, what do we mean when we talk about accessions? We talk about sedera. So there's language that some people will speak foreign to.
Yeah, how many of you have been teachers? Now, you are the experts here in terms of the way in which we use language, or you should be. But yes, we don't think about that enough. And sometimes the Holy Spirit has a way of helping you with that. And as where's Lauren gone? Lauren's over there. We had a young man turned up at church, hadn't 2 generations away from church. He just said he felt he should be there. And the great challenge, Gordon, for us in that respect is we had to start thinking about what we said and the way we said it. Because no longer were we preaching to a mature and experienced church. We're now got someone there that has no Christian background at all. Wow, what a great opportunity. We'll lend them out. We'll lend them out, he can move around. Okay, any final red ones that you really want to get over to us?
Yeah. The reduction of the relevance of the church in society.
Yeah. Relevance, a critical challenge. But it's linked to some of the things that you wrote on the first first flip charts, isn't it? About identity within communities and so on. For some of us, that's easier than others. Some of us that are within housing estates, for example, have the advantage of most people being able to walk to church. Some of you with gathered congregations will find that much more difficult. But the issue of relevance is something which I think needs to bubble up in this whole process. My promise to you is that nothing that you've written on the post-it notes will be lost, and it will be collated into the report which I'll write after this evening. Let's move on briefly to the final discussion and the final session. Where we are, you have in the post-it notes described the now, what it's like now, congregational level, presbytery level. You've also given us some building blocks of that vision. And I've been reading them while you've been working on that exercise, and there's a lot of shared issues and shared ideas there, so crafting something out of that will be possible. So all we need to do is join the dots. And that's where the planning comes in. And that's where the Presbytery mission plan, the plan of pastoral care of ministers, which Graham Beebe, he sent his apologies tonight. Graham Beebe leads the pastoral care group. The plans that we have for administration, finance, and buildings, Julian, that's where they sit. They sit in terms of that territory between where we are now and where we want to get to. But we do need, so that's a but again, Bill, that's another $5. If we're going to be successful, we do need to set ourselves the challenge. I've seen too many strategies become documents gathering dust on shelves and so on. And the way to avoid that is to make sure that everybody actually identifies with the goals that need to be delivered. And I sort of said that something about goals in the presbytery, but let's just look at what a goal might look like. I made some gratuitous comments about East Fife and Wraith Rovers. Jim, can I publicly apologise? You do know what a goal looks like, but it's usually your own goal. Sorry, that's not fair. The jargon of SMART goals is quite useful in some ways. A goal has to be specific. In other words, you have to know what it looks like. It can be measured. In other words, you can tell it's happened. And you must achieve the goals if you're going to get to the vision. So these are real things. I had a colleague who used to call them big, hairy goals. The big things that we need to nail if we're going to make progress. They must be realistic. We do work in a realistic environment. And they must pass the hey dad, hey mum test, which is that you ought to be able to show people that the goal that you set out to achieve has actually been achieved. So in 5 years' time, show me that you've achieved that goal. Now what does that mean? Here's a test for you. Goal or no goal? This is goal line technology like you've never seen it before. Is this a goal? Double the size of Sunday school. If you achieved it, would you be able to see it? It's a goal. Okay? Redevelop the church hall. Hands up for goal. No goal? The no goals have it. Does that mean giving the church hall a coat of paint, or does it mean knocking it down and rebuilding it? It's not specific enough. Increase giving. Goal? Yeah, but if I ended up with £1 more this year than last year, you'd have hit that goal. So it needs to be a bit more expansive. Establish a vibrant youth ministry. This is a tricky one. Is that a goal or not? Goal? It's probably a goal, because I think you could probably show that to someone and say you had established it. Have more involvement with our community? Goal? Exactly. It's too woolly. It's an aspiration and an important one, but it's not a goal as such. Create a new pastoral care structure. Goal? Yeah, if that was what you were trying to do. Here's one that become more spiritual. I have to say that in one church, when I was doing an exercise like this, somebody said, we don't want any more of that here. But I'll leave you to think about that. It's not really a goal. It's, again, an aspiration. And improve our administration. It's not really a goal. The important thing, and the reason for showing these examples, is to say that when you build a strategy around goals, the goals have got to be very significant and be able to encourage people to work towards them. And the goals in themselves then deliver the vision. So, final question in your tables to talk about. I want you just to identify, I can't remember, goals on this journey from where we said we are at the moment in the post-it notes to where we want to be in terms of our vision. I want you to identify just 1 or 2 goals. No more than 5. I'll give you out the big flip chart papers again. I don't want you to spend a long time doing this because it needs a lot more work, but I would like you to come up with a maximum of 5 goals that will deliver our vision as you described it earlier in the evening. So let's spend 10 minutes in our tables just talking about that now. Last minute. Sorry to rush you. I'm keen that we should finish by no later than 9:10 if we can do that.
Meetings only last till such and such. That you take with a pinch of salt.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry to rush you, but I'm conscious of your time and the hour is late. Let's just briefly hear what goals you've managed to identify. There's more work to be done on this as we do the action planning in any case, but it was just to give us a flavor. So I'm just going to ask each table to give me 1. I'm only doing that so you're not embarrassed. Okay? So this table, would you like to give me 1 of your goals? I'm not going to use the microphone, so if you can just shout out as best you can. Don't worry, I'm not going to criticize you. Sounds like you could show me that in 5 years' time if you'd done it. You might need to work on the words, okay. Next table, that table there, Derek? I would accept it if you said how many, but I know what you mean. But it is, yes, we're all up for that, I'm certain of that. Back group?
Every single thing that the Presbytery does should be either missional, pastoral, or legally necessary.
Legally necessary.
Necessary.
I'm glad you put them in that order. But yes, absolutely, that's a great one. Neil, your group?
It needs refined, but something around reducing the ability of us to cause harm to folks across the church by facilitating good endings where necessary.
Good endings where necessary. Yes, that's an interesting, important one. This table here, who's... yeah, go for it.
Offer training courses to church members to have in every congregation somebody trained or a number of people trained
to do different things. Yeah, training is a theme that's come out, I think, through, and if we're going to be supportive, we've got to provide the training. And so yes, training. And Jane, your table for the last one? Or Andrew?
There's an interesting one here, to become relevant, trusted, and visible in our community.
Relevant, trusted, and visible in our communities. Yeah. Thank you for that. I hope you've enjoyed this. I just want to say a few words in conclusion. If I can. The action planning thing, as I said, is the detail of which the boards and so on will be responsible, not least the Presbytery mission plan produced by next year. But let me just recap. One of the ideas of strategy is to achieve this. Those of you that were physics teachers, Catherine, will recognize the domains, the magnetic domains here. When you put a magnet behind a magnetic material, the things orientate themselves more or less in the same direction. We need to be able to do that a bit more in a presbytery setting to encourage people to be moving forward in the same direction. The strategy should be that magnet that gives a bit of shape. It doesn't make everybody go in exactly the same direction, but does create a bit of forward momentum. I make no apologies for using this, my favorite slide. It's not mine, it's from MIT in the States, about change. You've talked about change tonight, and we know the difficulties of change within congregations and within the church more widely. Change will happen if three things come together. First of all, we understand what we're unhappy with, the level of dissatisfaction with today. That was the post-it note exercise that you did. If you add to that a clear and positive vision of the future, that's what we started with. It needs shaping, but that's what we started with. You put these two things together, and then you work out the route that you want to journey between the two flags. If you get these three things, and the sum total of them is greater than the economic and psychological and sometimes political cost of changing, change will happen. So that's it. We need to go on a strategic journey together if we're to succeed. But we do actually need to do one more thing, and that is to communicate well, both within Presbytery and out towards our congregations, to build buy-in. A good strategy will only work if there's buy-in at every level. It's no use us talking about it here at Presbytery level if we can't communicate it and it's not understood well at congregational level. And I just want to show you this video, if I can bring it up. It shows what happens if two people looking at the same thing see something slightly differently. So there are some dangers if we don't get that bit right in terms of communicating, that people understand things in different ways. And then, of course, and we should always be ready to be surprised, shouldn't we, in terms of what the Holy Spirit does through us and with us. And this little video is just to remind you to be always ready to be surprised. Got it? No. Go the other way. There we are. Surprises that we face as we go on this journey together are not quite like that one. Thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank George and the good people here at St Bryce Kirk for all your assistance. I want to thank Graham again, Lauren and Lorraine, and all of you for coming and making a contribution. I will totally misrepresent this when I write. No, I don't mean that. I will write it up as faithfully as I can as a starter, and then Presbytery will discuss it further at the future meeting. So thank you. Safe journey home. Jane, would you like to close us perhaps in prayer? Thank you.
I think we would like to thank Brian very much for bringing his considerable expertise to share with us this evening in such a wonderful setting here together in St Bryce Church. So shall we put our hands together, friends? Thank you, Brian. Together, looking at one another. The grace of our
Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.